The Google Pixel 4 and 4 XL came out in 2019 to mixed reception, bringing an all-new design with a square camera bump and two lenses instead of one, along with that clean glass back and grippy aluminum frame. From the front, the display was pretty gorgeous, 90Hz Samsung OLED, and that comically egregious notch from the Pixel 3 XL was thankfully gone. But even so, the bezels were thick as ever, as they put in some weird radar motion sense, so you can do things like wave over your phone to skip songs in your playlist. Yes, it's as useless as it sounds, and there's a reason they never brought it back. And comparing those bezels to something like the same year's Galaxy S10, and it's no wonder some people weren't too impressed. That being said, the software experience was classic clean Google Android, and the camera was one of, if not the best in any smartphone at the time. Hey, how's it going? I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and this is one of the strangest smartphones I think we've seen in recent years, and it's in a really interesting position with Android 14 right around the corner, a version of software it will not be receiving as it's stuck on Android 13, and as of this review, it hasn't even received security updates since October 2022, though that doesn't stop the phone from repeatedly telling me to check for security updates. Aside from the Pixel 4 and 4 XL, there was also the Pixel 4a, a more budget-oriented version, although it looks a little closer to the Pixel 5, and came out a year after the Pixel 4 and 4 XL. As a result, not only does it have a 5G model, which the Pixel 4 doesn't have, but it also will be getting Android 14, which is a bit messy. If you have a Pixel 4 right now, I don't think you need to upgrade quite yet, unless battery life is quite bad. That is an issue with any older phone, and the Pixel 4 wasn't known for the best battery to begin with. The XL is a much bigger battery, so it should be better, and it hasn't been too bad for me at all. And while I've talked a lot of smack about this phone thus far, a lot of these issues I've mentioned were big issues in 2019, but the difference between then and now is that the phone no longer costs $800. Now, it can be found on eBay for like $150 and lower. I'm not kidding, and that's kind of an absurd deal. The 4A is around the same price nowadays, but I'd personally get the XL. It's going to be a more premium experience, so it's the same camera, and the camera quality still holds up pretty well today, for the record. And beyond just that, the Pixel 4 has a 90Hz panel, which has everything feel a lot smoother when just going around the US versus Samsung's and iPhones from the same year. Also, I was clowning on the motion sense for good reason, it's stupid, but one good thing that came out of it is basically a clone of Face ID. There's no fingerprint reader on this phone, it uses Face Unlock. From my experience, it's felt pretty reliable and consistent. The bezels may be big, but if you're buying a phone for around $150, you probably don't care that much. At least I don't, and you're not going to find much more premium feeling devices for around that price point with such a nice build and polished experience. So with kind of this preamble out of the way, I don't think Pixel 4 owners need to upgrade unless their battery is bad. I do think if you find it cheap, the Pixel 4 is absolutely worth buying. So now let's take a little bit more time and go a bit deeper. How does the Pixel 4 and 4 XL hold up 4 years later? The simple answer is that these phones do hold up pretty well, or specifically my own Pixel 4 XL here does. The oh-so-orange colors makes this one of my all-time favorite smartphone designs from the back. I absolutely love the contrast with the black frame and salmon power button, and in fairness, the white and black versions are pretty nice too, though I'd personally never want the black one as it has a glossy glass finish instead of matte, meaning fingerprints galore. The square camera bump would end up being used again with the Pixel 5 in 2020, and then the Pixel 6 and 6 Pro would change things up, so it doesn't feel out of date to me, and not even that unlike a modern iPhone, although the size difference compared to my iPhone 14 Pro's camera setup is downright laughable. Crazy how big cameras are getting these days, and you don't have to look any further than current Pixel phones to see more evidence of that. In 2019, the Pixel 4 was a good phone marred by too many weird little issues. Mediocre battery life, only 2 camera lenses instead of 3 like on most of its competitors, the massive thick bezels, the amount of work that went into the radar motion detection instead of something useful, the fact that the phone somehow couldn't record in 4K 60, one of the most basic smartphone features at the time. There's a lot to love with this phone, but there's also a lot to dislike. And again, luckily, 4 years later, I think a lot of those initial issues just don't really matter so much anymore, because ultimately this is a 4-year-old phone, and so you know there's going to be downsides. Performance on this phone is pretty slick. There's 6 gigs of RAM, which was okay in 2019. Anything you want to do on here, it should be more than capable of in a game game, any app, pretty much anything. As always, I love Google's clean Android experience. I also love, given that I got Orange, there's kind of just orange accents everywhere within the OS experience, and it really adds to it for me. It's just nice. It feels like a nice phone, because it is. Let's turn to the camera. This is something that Google Pixel is always one of the best at, thanks to Google's mainly software. Now, I was disappointed at the time, and I still am today, that they only put 2 lenses in this thing. Only a year after they said that one lens was superior. There should be an ultra wide here, but there isn't. It's just 1x zoom and 2x zoom with the 12.2 megapixel wide lens and 16 megapixel telephoto lens. The selfie camera is 8 megapixels, and there's only one of them, while the 3XL had 2 of them. I think it's a missed opportunity. There's a huge top bezel, so why not stick in 2 cameras, but they didn't. Even so, there is a 1x and 1.4 zoom in because the camera is pretty wide and it gets some decent results. Nothing mind-boggling, but pretty good. It's the back camera where things are definitely more interesting. Now, as said, for video, you can't record 4K 60. Now, Google's reasoning for the time was basically that 4K 60 takes up too much space, and so nobody needs it. Most people record in 1080p anyways. I hate this line of thinking. The whole, oh, we're not going to add this feature because, you don't really need it. But I digress, it's fine. 4K 30 is plenty good enough. It's photos where things get really impressive. Now, yes, this is still a 2019 smartphone, which means 2019 smartphone pictures, but they're pretty darn good. And I was able to get consistently nice looking results, even in lower light situations, albeit not as nice as you would get on a newer smartphone, as they've really improved in this regard with bigger sensors especially, so they can get in more light. Still though, portrait shots, regular shots, night sight shots. I like that Google's camera app is simple enough to use versus Samsung's is kind of confusing. I just did a review on the also 2019 Galaxy S10, so that's why I've been bringing it up. And when you go indoors into regular low light situations, results do dip a bit. That said, it does a pretty good job, and it's much better than the Galaxy S10, how it holds up. I think I'd be pretty happy taking photos with this thing even today if I had to, which is quite the accomplishment for a 4-year-old smartphone. So the camera is definitely one of the highlights of this phone, along with the 90Hz panel and the overall just clean Android experience. I like the 4XL a lot, and I think for around, and actually quite a bit under sometimes, $150, it is actually worth it. The question is it worth it versus going up to a Pixel 5 or a Pixel 6 for not that much more money? And I don't have an answer for you. It's really up to you and what you want. That being said, the Pixel 4 XL, at least, is a pretty good smartphone in 2023, and I don't see that changing anytime soon, even as it doesn't get Android 14. Google did a pretty good job here, and it's too bad they had all of those weird, gimmicky quirks that just were so unnecessary, ruining the phone experience. Now, there's some nice ones, like the squeeze feature, I still think can be useful, but the radar stuff sucks, as cool as the face unlock is, and the battery life, while it's not too bad in my experience thus far, on the smaller Pixel 4 I can't see it being very good. Assuming all of that is okay, this is still a pretty sweet smartphone in 2023, and I think Google Pixel represents a lot of value if you're buying used that just can't be found in any other flagship smartphone. But I want to hear from you guys. Are any of you actually using a Google Pixel 4? Maybe even the 4a, which is a similar smartphone, sort of? I'd say it's a little closer to the Pixel 5 in a few respects, but even so, make sure you let me know what you think of it in the comments down below. Curious to see thoughts on this one. If you found this video interesting or helpful, maybe hit that like button and consider subscribing for more content just like this. Huge shout out to those of you who have already become members on the channel. That's a relatively new thing, and there's more of you than I expected, so big thank you for that. If you guys want to see a review on the Pixel 3/3XL, let me know, because I'd like to do that one, as well as some more general Android reviews coming your way. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and I will see you all next time.